So what are we doing this week? We're doing my autumn TBR. If you're kind of a veteran of my channel, you'll probably know that I don't really do TBRs. They're not really my thing, but I did a TBR for Blackathon in February and I actually ended up really enjoying it. So I figured I'd try an autumn TBR just to see how it goes, you know? I have some pretty weird reading plans for like March at the very least, so I think this could be a good way to like let you guys know what I'm doing. So you're not like, what is happening? When it comes to my autumn wrap-up. I don't know. I tend not to do monthly wrap-ups. I do my wrap-ups every 3 months, so every season. I just did my summer wrap-up, that was last week, and I'll be doing an autumn wrap-up at the end of May. So yeah, that's kind of all the context that you need for this video. I'm going to be starting with my like solid reading plans for at least March, and then we'll be getting into books that I might read, and I could change my mind, and we'll see. I don't really know. This is how this video is working. If you don't know, I've actually gone back to university. I'm in my 3rd year and I'm doing a unit all about narrative, and we're starting off with realism. So these first few books are required reading that I have for that unit. And the first book I'm going to talk about is Madame Bovary by Gustave Flaubert. I'm actually already 100 pages into this. And when I'm not really a classics reader. I don't really think of myself as a classics reader. So when I started this, I was having a lot of trouble with it because I'm not used to that kind of writing style. This was written in 1856. It follows Emma Bovary, who is unhappy in her marriage and she has a lot of affairs, and it was very scandalous at the time. It got banned and the author was charged with indecency. So yeah, what I find with a lot of the required reading that I do for university is that they're obviously a lot of them are classics, so I don't really have a handle on them when we first start reading them, but once we start talking about them in class, I kind of gain this greater appreciation for what the book actually like does and what the text is saying and all that sort of thing. So I'm actually really enjoying this at the moment because we've been talking about it in class and because I'm able to grasp it on like a more literary scale. So obviously I'm going to be reading these required reading books in a slightly different way than I'm going to be reading all of my regular books. But yeah, I'm actually really enjoying this so far. I am liking Emma, even though I hate her. Like, I hate her, but she's such an interesting character, and it's not her fault that I hate her, but like, she's great, but she's also terrible. Like, she's so annoying, but she's so interesting. Like, yeah, she's great, but I also really don't like her. Those are my thoughts so far. Yes. The next book that we're going to be reading after Madame Bovary is The Hound of the Baskervilles by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle. All I know about this is that it's a Sherlock Holmes story. That's the extent of my knowledge, and that's all I really want to know going in, because it's only like 200 pages. So yeah. There you go. The last bit of required reading for that unit is The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories. Obviously, we're going from the realism of Madame Bovary through Sherlock Holmes to Lovecraftian horror. So that's kind of the journey that this unit's taking us on. I got this edition because I like it. It has deckled edges and French flaps, which you know that I love. I've never read any Lovecraft, and immediately after this, I'm going to be reading The Ballad of Black Tom by Victor Lavale, I don't know, I'm sorry. This is based on the horror at Red Hook, which isn't included in this, so I'm going to read that online after I finish this, before I read this. But yes, I'm interested to read some horror because I've never really read any horror before. Well, that's a lie. I have read one horror book, but I really, really hated it, for reasons that you don't really need to know. Well, I mean, I guess, like, basically, the whole thing culminated in this kind of weird beach sex scene between this middle-aged woman and this kind of eldritch serpent Aztec god. And it wasn't good, and it was awful. So I've never read any horror that isn't actually terrifying, you know? So I'm interested to read these two books because I'm interested to see what I'm going to think of, like, actual horror, and horror that, like, isn't the scariest thing you've actually ever read on like a human level. I'm not explaining this properly, but basically this is the last bit of required reading, and then as a bit of required reading for myself, I'm reading this because I'm interested in it, and I figured it would be the perfect time to pick it up once I get some context around Lovecraft from this book. And the last, like, solid plan for autumn is that as soon as I finish those books, I'm going to be diving straight into Night Watch by Terry Pratchett. If you follow me on Goodreads, then you'll know that I actually already have this in my currently reading, because I was planning to read it straight after Blackathon, but I didn't account for these required reading books, so this has to wait. But I really want to get better about my Discworld reading this year, so we're diving straight into this. I'm going to order Thud as soon as I finish this. We're gonna be powering through Discworld this year. Oh, I didn't give any context for this book. This is the next book in the City Watch sub-series. If you don't know, I have a series on my channel where I read all the Discworld books. I've previously just finished The Fifth Elephant. This is the 6th book in the City Watch sub-series. There are 2 books after this. Yeah. These next 2 books are books that I have been meaning to read since January. So if I don't get to them in autumn, I don't know what has happened. Hopefully nothing awful. The Seep by Kana Porter is a book that I have been wanting to read since like mid last year. I haven't got to it yet. Sage from Sage Reads, they love this book. So I'm dying to read it because I want to be part of things. You know, I feel like I'm missing out by not reading this book. It's so pretty. Just look at it. This is like a soft alien invasion that follows a Jewish transgender woman as she is kind of dealing with this very strange form of grief. That's my kind of strange synopsis for this. I didn't explain it very well, but there you go. That's all you're getting from me. Spell Hacker by M.K. England. I will read this. I promise I will read this. No one is dying for me to read this except me. I want to read this. I loved The Disasters, which I read kind of around this time last year, actually, and I fell in love with M.K. England. I think they're fantastic. So Spell Hacker was released in January. This is kind of a weird fantasy sci-fi mix, and it follows this like heist crew as they're siphoning this kind of magical resource that exists, and corporations have been using it for like evil ends. So yeah, I'm interested to read this, and I hope it's going to be great. I've kind of read like the first page. I'm very excited to dive back into M.K. England's writing style. It's going to happen. It will happen. I hope. And then the next books are kind of, they can be swapped out with like any other book on my physical TBR. So yes, but I figured these are the ones that are like in the forefront of my mind because I've mentioned them in videos recently, or they're sequels to books that I've read recently. So yeah, but really, if you know of any other books on my physical TBR that you kind of really want my opinions on, then let me know. I realize that I don't do book hauls, so you guys don't really know what I've actually got on my shelves. Would you be interested in a video that is like just like my entire physical TBR? I know that Sam from Thoughts on Tomes did one of those recently, but let me know if you'd be interested in that at all, or if that would be like a monumental waste of time. I don't know. Becoming Curly Lewis by Jane Harrison. I feel like I've said the synopsis for this a lot recently. This follows a young Indigenous Australian girl in 1985. She was adopted by a white family and she's going to university in Sydney. And when she goes there, she kind of figures out, she goes on this journey of self-discovery and figures out that there is a lot more to her identity and her Indigenous Australian identity than she initially realised. And it is told in flashbacks with her mother, her birth mother, who is living in the 60s, and that kind of struggle that exists as well. So I'm very interested to get to this. It's a 5-star prediction for me, and it's by an Indigenous Australian author, so I'm very excited to get to this. I hope it happens in autumn. Our Dreamed at Dusk, Shimanami Tasogare Volume 2 by Yuki Kamitani. I hope to get to this. I read the first volume in summer. You would know that if you watched my last video. I forgot to mention in that video that I just love Yuki Kamitani's art. I think that they just are so expressive and fantastic, and I love their use of color because like normally the first couple pages in these books are colored, and I love that. I just love them. They're fantastic as an artist. I want to love it. I want to love it so badly, and I have a feeling that where the first volume left off is gonna, you know, take me to a place where I love it. That was a really weird way to say that. But I hope I like this, okay? Don't judge me. Catching Telacrow by Amberlynn Quay Molina. I don't have a physical copy of it, but I'm going to be reading it on audiobook because someone commented on my video about Indigenous Australian authors that I really want to read and said that Catching Telacrow has an audiobook that's narrated by Miranda Tapsell, who is a really famous Indigenous Australian actress, and I love her. So I'm very interested to read that, to like experience that story through her voice. I think that's going to be a lot of fun, and I am almost certain that I'm going to be reading that in autumn. So yeah, look out for that as well, I guess. Euphoria Kids by Alison Evans. I haven't mentioned this book since I mentioned it in my 5-star predictions video. This also came out earlier this year, and I just haven't got around to it yet. Alison Evans is a non-binary Australian author. I'm really interested in supporting them, so I really want to read this book. This kind of, as far as I know, this is an upper middle grade kind of really young YA book. It follows these 3 queer kids as they're coming to terms with their identity. Alison Evans has described this as wanting to give queer kids a resource to have them be aware of the idea of gender euphoria before gender dysphoria. I don't know if I'm explaining that properly, but I really want to read this. I think it's going to be really good. It has like Studio Ghibli vibes, if I'm not mistaken, so I'm very interested in reading it. It's going to be good, and I hope I get to it in autumn. The last book on my autumn TBR is Bloody Rose by Nicholas Eames. This is the second book in the Banned series and the sequel to Kings of the Wild. I read Kings of the Wild in February and I loved it. It was fantastic. So I really want to get to Bloody Rose soon. I have nothing else to say about it. It's fantasy. It's mercenaries. It's fun. I really hope I like this. I know that Josie from Josie the Reading Witch really liked Bloody Rose, so I hope I love it as well. It's gonna be good, and I hope I get to it in autumn. That kind of got a bit repetitive towards the end there, but I hope that wasn't too difficult for you all to sit through. These are all the books that I hope to read in autumn. I might swap some of them out for other books on my physical TBR. Again, let me know if you want to know what else is on my physical TBR. Out of the books that aren't solid plans, which one of these you want me to prioritize, because I'm very interested in what you actually want me to read as well. But yeah, let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if you are excited about me reading any of these books, and I really hope you have a good day. Thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you again next week with a new one. Bye!